Welcome to Words of Wisdom by Wiser. My name is Michelle Lee. I am the founder of Clever Carbon and Women in Climate, and I'm very excited to be in conversation today with Jessica Robinson, partner at Solve Strategies. We'll be talking about gender finance and women leadership. Jessica, it is so awesome to be here with you. I'm very excited for the audience to get to know you better. So let's start off with a couple of icebreakers. Tell us, how do you relax?
So honestly, I'm not a very relaxing person. I'm not one of those people that sits in front of Netflix at all. I have 3 children, 5 adopted animals. My house is chaos. But what I really do enjoy is running. So I put on my music. I'm into really quite hardcore dance music. I put my music on and I run.
Wait. Tell us an artist.
Oh, loads of DJs, loads of DJs. I have decks with records and
Wow.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's what I do. And the other thing I do is writing.
Okay.
I've written a diary since I was 14 years old. I don't know, I've always enjoyed writing. I don't really read, I just write.
Yeah.
Those are my 2 rather unusual ways of relaxing, to be honest.
I mean, running I get,
Yeah.
and I feel like journaling, we just don't usually have time these days. So kudos to you for making time for doing that.
There's a lot of written diaries. I say to my kids, when I pass away, here you go, enjoy.
Wow. You can read all of Mummy's thoughts about you.
Yeah.
Do you consider yourself a risk taker or a risk averse person? If you can give me an example, that would be awesome.
I'm absolutely a risk taker. I always have been.
Yeah.
I'm never one to sit still for very long. I've lived all over the world, and the moment I get that excitement that I want to start somewhere new, experience something new, I do it. So I first left the UK, London, moved to New York in my early 20s, didn't know anybody. And I raised 2 children in Beijing and Hong Kong. And I had my 3rd child in Hong Kong. And then I moved to the Middle East, and so for me, I've always done that because of passion and excitement. It hasn't been something planned or like a job offer or anything. It's like, right, let's go.
Okay. Yeah. Moving around in different countries and bringing your children along, that's a risk, but one that is very rewarding.
It has its moments.
Yeah.
I think living in China, 20 years ago, 19 years ago, was really hard. I look back now and I've become a new mother, and I was living in such a challenging environment. The road signs were not in English. I mean, this is a while ago, and I had 2 young children. It was, I look back now actually, and I think, God, what was I thinking?
Yeah. But, you're a skilled risk taker and you made it to the other end.
And if I can move around like I have, I know I can do anything. So, yeah.
Amazing. So moving into the main episode, Jessica, exploring your career and all that you've done so far, if you had to look back at your career and pick one moment that you learned the most from, what was it and why?
I mean, I always say this to my children as well, is, from pain we grow, and it's always the difficult moments that we really develop the most, right? I do think, but that aside, the one moment, and I hold this really dear to my heart. I was living in Hong Kong, and I was running a think tank, so an Asia-wide sustainable finance, responsible investment think tank, and it was hard. It was at a point where I would walk into our potential sponsors, the members of this think tank, and they just didn't get climate and they didn't get sustainability. And I felt, we had no money. I was trying to pay, bring in finance to support the team. We were trying to do really good research, and it was tough. It was really tough. And I remember once going to this event, and the woman speaking was, at that point, she was Minister for the Environment in Hong Kong, but she has a long sort of history of human rights, sort of open, she's just a rock star. Anyway, so I'd never met her. And then we get to the end of the conference or the event, and she said, any questions? I put my hand up and I asked a question. I was so nervous. And afterwards, she came up to me, she said, would you like to go for lunch? I was like, oh my God, a minister she wants to talk to me.
Wow.
And we then became good friends. And she really supported me in my career and my growth of the think tank as well.
Yeah.
And the reason I mention that is because that event in itself really demonstrated to me the importance of supporting other women in their roles, in what they're trying to achieve, and sometimes just going out on a limb and really taking care of other women. And for me, I feel really privileged to have had that moment and that she decided to support me. So that was one event that really was very important to me.
And also an example of taking a risk, right? Putting your hand up and asking a question in front of so many people is very daunting. Your heart's like beating and racing, and
are they all going to think I'm stupid?
Yeah.
Actually, it turns out they're all thinking similar things, right?
Exactly. And it, earned you this opportunity. So I love that example.
Yeah.
So you're an author, Jessica, and your first book, Financial Feminism, talks about not just the pay gap, but also the gender investing gap, that women are investing less, they're saving less, and they're more cash-oriented versus investment-oriented. You've worked across geographies and sectors. How do we bridge this gap, and particularly in the region?
Yeah. So the book, Financial Feminism, it's not solely about the investment and finance gap. It's actually, that's really for the context. What I was trying to do in the book is actually say, look, women are facing a whole range of financial challenges, whether it is, the pay gap and so forth. But the good news is women are also moving into owning more wealth. So and the stats, I think, are around like a third of private wealth now is owned by women. But the premise of my book was really, with this trend that women are now becoming financial decision makers in their own right, how can we use money and investment to achieve sustainability goals or things that we want to do with our money? Because when I started researching, and this actually came from my day job, so I work in sustainable finance, I'm a management consultant, I do strategy work, and this actually came from speaking at conferences, and so often women would come after the conference and say, oh, I'm really interested in sustainable investing. And then I took that into what do women do privately and as individuals. And the research is fascinating. It's women are highly motivated to think about the impact of those decisions, right? They want to use their money to invest in companies that are not employing children, that are having a positive impact on the environment. So it's sort of these two trends, women owning more wealth, but women also being incredibly motivated about the world in which they live. The challenge is, you look at the financial industry, women are still seen as they're not communicated to in the same way. This is changing. I've been on this bandwagon for a long time now, but I really feel that we need to embrace women as individual decision makers, as game changers, right? And give them the tools to be confident to make those decisions. And so that's what the book's about, really. It's sort of a sort of chatty engagement with women and saying, look, we can build a better world, right? We can start with the money that we invest or we save, and this is how you can start doing it. That's very much the spirit of the book.
Okay.
And I have to say, the world is getting easier for that to happen. But when I wrote the book sort of 4 or 5 years ago, it's still not easy.
If we even look back 50 years ago, not many women had independently owned their own wealth, right? Not all women were working. And now we really see this change. And as women start to accumulate wealth and their own wealth, I think your book and your thoughts are going to be really a game changer.
And the question you said about different regional challenges, I did a piece of research and I interviewed women from 5 different markets across the world. And it all came out the same. Women are highly motivated. They really care about the impact of their decisions and things around climate, gender, and everything. But the nuances, obviously, of culture and the geographies of markets in which people live. But the consistent message is women really care, right? And so we need to make it easier for women to use their wealth in such a way that I think does build the kind of world we want to live in.
So how can we better unlock women's full potential as leaders in sustainability? I know this is something that you're exploring in your second book, Breaking the Green Ceiling, which is focused on women leadership and sustainability.
Yeah. So sort of building on that theme, women as game changers, right? One thing that's really apparent to me is that women are already leading on climate and sustainability. We see it in everything. I don't know, we were just talking about events and the content, and always when I go to a panel or an event, it's the women who are really, really solving these challenges. And the purpose of my second book is to elevate these voices. I think the more we do to shine a spotlight on the amazing work that women are doing, the better. But it's also sort of asking why as well. So looking at the evidence in what behavioral traits are really supporting this, what is it that women are doing differently, particularly when you see the evidence around more women at the decision-making table. It leads to longer-term peace agreements. So there's just so much evidence out there that I think we need to elevate. And then I'm also looking at, I'm interviewing and speaking to women from across the Middle East as sort of case studies.
Mm-hmm.
So saying, what challenges do you face? What do we need to do better? And the end goal is really to come out with a blueprint to say, okay, how do we elevate women into more leadership positions to actually ensure that we move quicker, right? Because I really, I believe it, hand on my heart.
And tell us a little bit about that process on the research. How's that going? When can we expect to read the book?
Well, okay, so my writing's a bit of a hobby. As I said, it's my relaxing thing.
Yeah.
It's going on. It's going well. But the thing is, the more I talk to more women, the more excited I get about the ideas that we need to include. And then you want to speak to everyone, right?
Very
It's
true.
exciting. It's very exciting.
So, Jessica, you are an active gender lens investor. Can you tell us a little bit about what does that mean?
Yeah.
And how can we improve access to capital for women?
Yeah. So essentially being a gender lens investor is obviously making decisions with a gender lens, right? So it's looking for, there are two aspects. There's looking for companies started by women. And then the other aspect is looking for companies that are providing services or goods to women specifically. And I'm sure a lot of people remember, was it a couple of months ago, the two VC guys that raised loads of money for a menopause app, and it was two guys. It's like, so the thing is, the story is, and we know this, women are still only raising such a fraction of capital, private capital, right? And I've seen it. I've seen these companies. I've seen these women pitch. This is not about lack of smart ideas, lack of energy. This is actually about the unconscious bias and the fact that a lot of capital still is held in the hands of male-dominated funds, right? And the capital system is also, created for and by men, right? So gender lens investing is something that's so important, right? We so need to mobilize capital to these women, and it's not just one market; it's across the world. Women still face that challenge. So I've been quite an active gender lens investor in a couple of VC funds. It's possibly one of the most enjoyable things that I do because I get to connect with other female investors and female founders. And it's just the spirit and the energy and the vision that you sort of bring together, the capital piece and the company, the entrepreneurial piece. But what we need to do is stop talking about it's only 2% of VC capital and actually doing stuff. And as much as I love accelerators and mentorships and all the ecosystem that sits beneath that, we need to do so much more. And so we need the banks, the investors to really commit to a significant proportion of capital and say, right, this is going with a gender lens. It's been happening increasingly and it's nice to see, but we're still like, it's a trickle, like it's nothing that it needs to be. And so one thing, I was saying about how I try to elevate younger women on LinkedIn. Every time there's a female-founded fund, I try and promote that. And, we just have to talk about it more. Because also, and actually this relates to the risk question, people say, oh, women are risk averse. Well, but that's not true at all. That's not true at all. The issue with women putting capital into these funds is actually a little bit to do with confidence. But it's also women like to make decisions together. There's a lot of research around peer-to-peer learning. So I think, it's about community building. It's about sharing your learnings with other female investors. And it's about actually really trying to put in the time to support these female founders. These VC funds run by women, the amount of time that goes into understanding that the women involved, understanding the proposition, helping them get from A to B to C. So I have to say, talking about relaxing, that's one of my joyful things in life is my investing. Yeah.
The other side of the coin to that is how do we motivate more women to become founders so that there's more options available? Personally, I have 2 projects of my own, but I find getting capital, just not something that I enjoy. And I actually consciously try to keep my projects small and lean so that I don't have to have staff and take that risk of having to, be responsible for other people's well-beings.
Yeah.
And, that limits a little bit in the scale of the projects that I do.
Yeah. And I think that's exactly the point, isn't it? If female founders are chasing that investment dollar and they have to work 10 times harder than men, there's an issue there, right? And I do feel the unconscious bias is very challenging, but I do think we need to make it easier for women so they can focus on what they're doing, building their businesses. Why is it that two young guys can go and raise a huge amount of capital for a crypto fund or whatever?
Yeah.
And then you've got women who are, honestly, some of the businesses that I've seen women developing, access to healthcare in rural areas, a lot around sort of small scale solar energy, let's see how we can fix this problem. And those are the kind of businesses that we should be supporting.
Right. Just kind of looking at where you are now and looking back, what is something that you'd like to tell your younger self?
I think, it's what everyone says, right? When we're young, we doubt ourselves. We feel like we need external validation. And I think the one thing I've learned is that the only validation you need is internal. I also think, and this is someone who's been working all over the world in sustainability, in gender, I really feel we need to be brave enough to build our own tables. We've been so busy trying to get a seat at the table.
Yeah.
Honestly, the way I'm looking at the world now, as I said, the real game changers, it's women. So rather than trying to get a seat at that table, I think the time is now. We just say, okay, let's go ahead, build our own table. Let's get this done. And I think you see that particularly around things like investment funds. Women started VC funds, right? I'm quite an active gender lens investor, but these VC funds are doing great work. They are looking for new technologies, founders that are women who are thinking out of the box. And 9 times out of 10, these women are they're actually trying to solve social, environmental problems. It might not be, building health companies, for example, because women tend to see, oh, this is a problem, we need to fix it.
Yeah.
And we're seeing that in everything. And so, back to what I say to my younger self is like, don't feel you need to fit into the existing world, right? And I worked in financial services, so it's a heavily male industry. Don't feel that needs to happen. Be brave, right? Find your kindred spirits. And there are so many women out there, right? The moment I connect with a smart woman, like you and I are standing outside, right? You just connect and you're focused on supporting each other, being brave, fixing problems. So yeah, that would be sort of my long-winded answer.
But it's a actual very succinct one. Build your own table.
Yeah.
And that resonates.
My second book is really to elevate that, right? To say, we don't have to sort of fit within the system. We could look at all these amazing women, and celebrate that as well.
Exactly. Okay. My last question to you, Jessica, is what is one question you'd like to ask another guest?
I want to ask another guest is, why is it 2025 and we're still having some of these discussions? We're still struggling. We still go to events and see all male panels.
Yeah.
So the question would be, is why are we still here?
Yeah.
What do we need to move much quicker? Because we are still here. And I say that as I turned 50 recently, right? So I've seen a lot, and in a lot of countries and a lot of cultures, but we're still not moving the needle, which comes back to the build our own tables.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Jessica, thank you so much for taking time with me today. I'm very excited to hear about your new book.
Thank you.
And I will definitely pick up a copy. Thank you so much.
Thank you.